in a monumental settlement, the National Association of Realtors, that's NAR, NAR just agreed to pay over $400 million to plaintiffs who were complaining that they felt like the realtor commission setup was bogus. What does this mean for home sellers? What does this mean for home buyers? What does this mean for the real estate community, as well as the lenders who serve that community? Well, that's what we're going to discuss on today's podcast episode. Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children 18 plus, you are tuned in to the Loan Officer Podcast with me, Dustin Owen, and a very special guest, backed by popular demand. She is still today one of the favorite bosses I have ever had. She is a who's who in mortgage who has transitioned herself into a who's who into real estate, and someone that I couldn't imagine could be any better at discussing this NAR settlement and the impact it's going to have both on the consumer, the real estate industry, and the lending industry. She is my friend. She is my former colleague, the one, the only Cynde Velez. Cynde, welcome back to TLOP.
Thank you so much for having me, Dustin. Appreciate it. Looking forward to our conversation
Yes,
today.
This is going to be a spicy and dicey, huh?
Yes, it is.
There's a whole lot of buzz. Like when I say a whole lot of buzz, if you are in the mortgage and real estate industry, this is all people want to talk about. They don't want to talk about interest rates staying higher for longer. They don't want to talk about the latest, greatest down payment assistance program. They literally, all they want to talk about is the NAR settlement, which, by the way, help me out here. It wasn't just the National Association of Realtors who was sued, correct?
Correct.
How many, like there's multiple lawsuits and there was multiple defendants, and the defendants were not just the association, but also several brokerages.
This is correct. Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, you have your very large brokerages, over $2 billion in total volume. Many of those already had settled. You have, Anywhere USA, which is a conglomerate covering your Coldwell Banker and Sotheby's, many other real estate firms. You can see that within their umbrella, along with RE/MAX. So there's
Keller Williams
involved. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the settlement was, and I don't know the exact number, but I know attorneys are going to get paid. That's what I know. There's some attorneys who are going to get paid. I don't think the actual plaintiffs are going to see much money.
No.
Maybe the lead plaintiffs will. Right, the person whose name is actually on.
Right, the sits or burn it.
Yes,
people. Those
two
people.
Yes, yeah. Those people. But attorneys are going to get paid, and the real estate industry, starting with the National Association, right? That is the professional trade organization that, for the most part, managed or lobbied on behalf of the real estate community for the past, century. They're paying $400 million to a bunch of people who felt like they were wronged due to the commission practices. If I understand this right, due to the commission practices that NAR supposedly allowed, or they approved, or even promoted. Is that kind of the gist of what's going on?
That's kind of the gist of exactly what's going on. And with this settlement, you may see some of those plaintiffs in the class action suit be paid out as much as $10 or $100.
$100? Like $10,000?
Like $10 up to probably an estimate of $100.
Like a Starbucks or like a date night?
A Starbucks or a date night, one of the two.
Okay.
So to kind of
So plaintiffs aren't getting paid. Attorneys are getting paid.
Right.
But the real estate industry, the way that we know it, could potentially be uprooted. Like 100 years of doing things a certain way.
Right.
We could be like today years old being like, hey, we get to rewrite the book now.
And we are rewriting the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's what you and I are going to talk about, right? We're going to jump into this. So people who haven't tuned in to Cynde in the past, like when I met Cynde, I met her because she was my boss's boss, right? So I was a young producing sales manager. I had a boss who was a branch manager. That boss reported to Cynde. Cynde and I actually come from like the same pedigree. So I knew of Cynde because when I entered the industry, you had many records at our old company for like producing loans, like literally by the dozen per day. Like your best year was something like 300 units, or it was something ridiculous, right?
Yeah, I think my best year was 299 loans closed for, I think, a whopping volume of maybe 13 million. Gives me an average transaction of like $60,000. So
okay, but 299 units, to put that in perspective,
right. It's a lot of loans.
You went on to manage billion-dollar regions. You still have your hand in the mortgage industry, right? You still train in the mortgage industry. You train loan originators, but you've been actively selling real estate now for, has it been a decade?
No, about 14 years.
Oh, no, not a decade, like a decade plus 4 years.
Yeah, well, when you're my age, you don't want to make anything a decade before it is.
Okay.
Not 2 decades,
yes.
a decade and a half.
Okay,
yes.
so and you've been actively selling real estate full-time.
Full-time, yes.
Full-time for the past 14 years. So you know a thing or two about how this particular lawsuit, or the settlement that we're talking about, is going to impact the real estate community. And then you can also offer some perspective on the way the lending community can participate in being a solution. And that's really what I'm hoping today is going to be about is, hey, let's clear the air, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So let's clear the air on the misinformation. And then let's also look for solutions, and let's not freak anybody the F out.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you and I as lenders lived through this when the federal regulations changed on how we can compensate loan originators, producing branch managers, et cetera. And we've seen our documents and our forms change when we went from went from GFE to LE, and we entered a CD, and we have this thing called TRID. So you and I as lenders lived it. Now it's time for our friends in real estate to live it. And if I were to look into the camera and tell the friends in real estate one thing, it's this: deep breath, take a step back. If it goes anything like the way I think it's going to go based on my experiences in lending, it's all going to be all right. It's going to be different. And I'm not telling you difference better, and I'm sure as heck not going to tell you difference worse, but it's definitely going to be different. And if you give it time, your industry will pivot, your industry will figure stuff out, and you will find a way to continue to operate, make a really good living doing something you're good at and you love doing. That would be my advice. I'm curious, what are your thoughts from a very high level if you were to talk to the real estate community?
Well, what you say is spot on. I think right now, more than ever, the real estate community and the lending community really need to work together and embrace, because I think there's a huge opportunity for the lending community more than ever to bring the value to the real estate community.
Say that again for me. Okay. Say that one more time.
Okay. I think, and I believe that now more than ever, there's a huge opportunity for the lending community to bring value to the real estate community.
I love that you said that, and here's why. In sales, we take what the defense has given us. This is a gift. This is a gift from the gods that you might not see for 5 or 10 years of your career. This is, if you're a mortgage loan originator, this is your time to get in front of every realtor you know, every realtor you've ever wanted to know, and sit down and be a solution provider. Sit down and be a partner. Sit down and sometimes be a shoulder to cry on, or be that person that tells them, look, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be, and here's why. And the here's why is going to be potentially tuning into this episode, taking notes based on what Cynde's going to share with us, based on the input that I'm going to give, and let people know it's going to be all right. But you hit the nail on the head. I wanted to just double down because it was that important. This is a phenomenal opportunity.
It really is. And it really also is, in likening it to, what we experienced in the lending world in, 2008, 2009, 2010, which was hard. I mean, let's say what it was. It was hard. But, there, you could be the doomsayer and go, oh my gosh, the sky's falling. It's never going to be the same. It's just, like I said, it's going to be different. And it provides, I think it's providing more transparency within the transaction from the very beginning, which is really what the goal was with we think that was what the goal was with all of the changes with the TRID. I don't know, it might have just been more paperwork, but. Yeah,
I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but I'm going to tell you, there's a certain part of me that thinks, I don't trust big business. It's funny because I've always worked in big business, and I promote capitalism, and, I've made a really good living because of it, but it's like, I still distrust big business. And at some point I do believe big business was behind that. I believe tech had something to do with this. It's neither here nor there at this standpoint because it's water underneath the bridge. But yes, if it's transparency, that is what's being told. Let me do this real quick for those that are tuning in. They're like, wait a minute, what are they talking about? What lawsuit is this? Just know this. Okay, a group of people got together and they went to the real estate industry, let's just call it that, easily, and they said, hey, we think your practices of commission and how commission is paid and how it's negotiated violates the Sherman Antitrust Act. Okay, I'm almost positive it's the Sherman Antitrust Act. It's antitrust. And they took it to the courts, and the courts with a jury favored with the plaintiffs. At which point they were told, these are the defendants, the real estate industry was told, okay, stop doing it. So change the way you do things. And oh, by the way, because we found you to be in the wrong, you're being penalized. So that's where this $400 million number comes from. And that's not the only dollar amount, because others have settled. Like I think if I read this right, Anywhere has already settled.
Yes.
And Keller Williams had already settled, and Remax had already settled because they were named in the lawsuit along with the trade organization.
That's correct.
But today we're talking less about, okay, it's $400 million. Sure, we made the joke that really and truly the consumer isn't going to be rewarded. Maximum, $100, more than likely $10. But it's more of what are things going to look like in the future? Because now all of a sudden, this is what I'm hearing. If I'm a home buyer, I used to be able to be represented by a licensed realtor or real estate agent. I guess not everyone's a realtor, but you're definitely a licensed real estate agent. I could be represented. I wouldn't have to pay anything because it was already pre-negotiated that the seller was going to pay for the commission to the selling agent as well as the commission to the buying agent. Well, now all of a sudden, the settlement and the reaction of it, correct me if I'm wrong here, is that you can no longer pre-negotiate how much money is going to be paid to, let's say I'm Dustin Owen, the home buyer, and you're Cynde Velez, the realtor of Dustin. It used to be pre-negotiated on every home that you showed me how much commission the seller was going to give you. Now they can't pre-negotiate.
Basically, yes. They no longer can the listing agent on behalf of the seller, even if the seller is willing to pay a real estate commission to the buyer, which that hasn't gone away. They still can agree to do so.
So let me ask you that question. Hey, Cynde, can sellers still pay the commission to a home buyer's representation?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's a big, nasty myth floating around right now that I think you and I came into today's podcast saying we need to make sure that we debunk that myth.
Yes.
Okay.
The media maybe doesn't have it all right.
You mean they don't know what they're reporting on? I mean, it is hard.
It's hard.
Right? It's hard to be a beat reporter and know everything about every industry. Mm-hmm. But it's like people like Cynde and people like me were like, hey, we're here. Just call us. We'd be more than happy to fill you in.
Yeah. Right.
But anyhow.
So what the settlement also says is that no longer can the listing agent enter into MLS, which is the multiple listing service, which is where we kind of have, it's the clearinghouse, if you will, of where all of the homes that are listed for sale in the active market, for the most part, in most of the country, and you have that offer of compensation that is only viewed actually on the realtor side. Public doesn't see that. So then that would have told the realtor representing the buyer what that seller was willing to or agreeing to pay in terms of a commission percentage for a buyer's agent to bring a buyer to that listing. And I don't know if you know what that number is. We call that a broker co-op because the two brokerages are cooperating with one another. And that percentage of transactions that were broker co-opted, in other words, that had two agents, a listing agent and a buyer's agent, what would you guess the percentage out of 100% would be?
Well, because I've been a lender now for the past 20 years and I've financed, I don't know, a couple thousand loans, I'm guessing 90%, but I'm someone who's in the know.
You're spot on. About 89 to 90%.
Yeah.
So you're looking at transactions where more often than not, there are two agents involved because buyers do want representation, right? Largest financial purchase of maybe their lives. And, it's commonplace. So, but we're just going to see that the commission compensation, yes, the seller can still pay it, but it's not going to be a defined number or entered into the multiple listings.
Yeah, and I think that's what's huge for all people to know. And I'm going to circle back real quick. MLS, you use the term clearinghouse, which is exactly like the proper term. But for the home buyers who are tuning in, who don't do what you and I do for a living, it's where Zillow gets their data. It's where Realtor.com gets their data. If you were to list your house, it's going into some kind of a multiple listing service engine, so to speak.
Exactly.
Okay, and it's within that engine that Cynde as a realtor can set Dustin up as a home buyer, a search, and I can get all the hottest properties the minute they hit the market, whereas like Zillow or Realtor.com may lag a day or two. I'm getting them right away. But Cynde, as a realtor, could look in there and say, okay, if Dustin buys this house, this seller has agreed to pay me, the representative of Dustin, 2.5% or 3% or 2%, right? It was negotiated. The seller got to negotiate up front with their agent
exactly
what they were going to be willing to pay in commissions.
Commissions have always been negotiable.
Yes.
In
Yeah,
real
correct.
estate.
Commissions have always been negotiable. Now, truth be told, the media, let's throw them back under the bus. The media tells home buyers all the time, you better shop for the best lender. Who cares if you get the wrong loan? Who cares if that lender sucks? Just get the cheapest mortgage. No one ever said you should shop for the best realtor. I think that's going to change. I think that is a new world that the real estate industry is going to have to live in, that us as lenders are like, hey, welcome to the party. We've been here for 40 years. And the real estate community is going to be like, oh, crap, what does that mean? And you and I can probably talk about what that unfolds or what that anticipation of unfolding could look like. But I just wanted to maybe dial things back for the consumer who's listening to kind of fully understand like the way things used to work. And then to also understand, you look at me. Okay, if you're on YouTube, you're looking at me right now. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, well, I don't know, go to YouTube and give us a subscribe and find this part in the episode. But look at me when I tell you this. You need representation. This is the largest purchase of your life. This is not a DIY, do it yourself. This is not hanging a ceiling fan or laying sod, okay, or even changing your oil. No, this is the largest transaction of your life. You need representation, and it's quite possible and plausible you will be able to afford representation because there are going to be sellers willing to negotiate. Now, there may be sellers that aren't willing to negotiate. And for that reason, we're going to have to see how that unfolds. But as a lender, just so you know, you can negotiate with Cynde that you're going to pay Cynde $10,000 to represent you on your home purchase. And if the seller's not willing to pay it, the seller can still give you a credit towards your closing costs, at which point, as long as you're not a veteran or active duty military buying a home using your VA home loan, then it's okay, it's allowed for you, the buyer, to pay the seller's commission on the settlement statement and for us to use a negotiated seller credit to offset that commission. So like things are still very much on the table. They're very pliable. It's just going to be a new world to operate in because the way things used to be done aren't done anymore that way.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on that note, where do we want to take this next? Like you being the resident expert, where do we want to take, like what next myth do we want to dispel?
So I kind of want to jump on your direct to you do need representation. And I can speak to Florida. It's where I'm licensed as a realtor. And in Florida, you have a transaction broker. There is no dual agency in the state of Florida. There are several states that prohibit it. There's about 8 states that prohibit it. And dual agency would mean that you somehow divide the baby and you actually represent both parties in the real estate transaction. That's next to impossible to do based upon what our duties are, as you would say, as a realtor.
So that's like I go out and I get a DUI and I'm going to go ahead and have the prosecutor defend me.
Something along those lines.
Okay,
right?
yeah, that sounds pretty rational.
Right. So,
by the way, I have no desire to get a DUI. Thank God for Uber.
But with that, so in Florida, we do have the ability to work with both the buyer and the seller. So if I'm working with both the buyer and the seller, so there is also a perception, I think, from buyers that if they contact the listing agent directly, they're going to get a better deal. I honestly have to say, I don't know very many sellers that are just going to say, I'm going to take less for my house because you brought me the buyer. It doesn't really happen.
I love that point. Like, I saw this in the news. Oh, home prices are going to drop. Okay, A, they're not. But B, even if they did, okay, they would drop by $12,000. Okay, $12,000 on your mortgage is like $70 a month. That's not going to drastically make homes more affordable. But I'm going to tell you this, as a seller, I own 2 properties. I will be a seller. I'm a greedy SOB. Okay, I want all that money for me. Like, the fact that, I now don't have to list my home for 6%. I can list it for 3, or I don't have to list it for 5. I can list it for 2.5. Cool. That's more money for daddy. That's not more money for the home buyer.
That's right.
Okay. Keep
That's
Keep
right.
going.
And so then just to kind of really just simplify, what is a transaction broker versus, what is a buyer's agent representation? What's really, really different? I think that there's five to seven areas that are covered. Most of them are duplicate. But the biggest thing that is different is in a transaction broker situation, we have limited confidentiality responsibility. As a buyer's agent, I have confidentiality responsibility. The word limited goes away. So I'm negotiating for you. I'm not giving away your dirty laundry.
Yeah, which is what you want in any negotiation.
Right.
I mean, you want someone who's looking out for your best interests.
Right.
Not necessarily a mediator, right? If you want to go there.
Right.
Right. I mean, there are some divorces that, hey, it's amicable and they can sit down with a mediator and it just works for them.
Right.
Most, fortunately or unfortunately, don't work that way.
Yeah.
Right. Husband, he has his representation, the wife has theirs, and they're going at it. Mm-hmm. They're going to negotiate.
Right.
And one attorney's representing one spouse, one attorney's representing the other spouse. Mm-hmm. Same thing applies when you're trying to purchase a home for, think about this, $400,000 for a starter house, $600,000, $900,000 if you're over in California, $1.2 million. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a big ass transaction. You kind of don't want to screw it up.
Right.
Yeah, it's just my thought. Well, let's pivot a little bit because I think that's a good overview of, hey, look, this is kind of how we got to where we are. Mm-hmm. This is kind of what's going on. My big message, and I had this letter that I penned while in the airport flying to Colorado with my son a week ago. And it was an open letter to the real estate community, signed by every good lender in America. And the first thing I said was, hey, take a deep breath, take a step back. It's all going to be okay. Because I really do believe that. I really do believe that realtors, the strong will survive. The good will become better. The successful will become more successful. I do believe that the bottom dwellers, whether they were the part-timers, whether they were the pretenders, whether they were the hacks, all that's irrelevant. I think they're going to have a hard time in this new world, but I think the real estate industry will become better because of it. And I think the professionals like yourself will become stronger because of it. And I think buyers, for the most part, are going to be represented. I think buyers are going to be able to have someone advocating for them. Mm-hmm. How that looks, y'all give us some time. And I say us, I mean, give the industry some time. And I'll say time, I'm not asking for weeks or even months, years. Like this goes into effect, I think, January 1?
July 1.
July. Okay, I Freudian slip there. I literally was like, in my mind, it was the summer. I said January, but yeah, July 1.
July.
So we're recording this here end of March, July 1. Mm-hmm. Yeah, guess what? Give it 12 to 18 months from July 1. Mm-hmm. And then we can circle back and tell you, hey, this is the world that we know, and this is what it looks like. Mm-hmm. But to think that we're going to live in a world where buyers are no longer represented, Cynde just shared with us, the statistics are 90% of transactions throughout the history of time, the buyer had their own representation. Mm-hmm. Okay, I don't see how you can just have a seismic shift away from that.
No, I mean, I would expect that initially maybe we will see less buyer representation. That number may skew, but I think it'll level. Maybe it'll bounce down, bounce back up, because we've got to work through this. I mean, 3 months is a very short window to make major changes in the way that real estate's been handled for so many years, which is why, I was so excited when I reached out and said, hey, I'd love to talk about this. And you were like, yeah, let's talk about it, because we together, real estate community and lending community, it is our responsibility right now to educate the consumer. And as realtors, we're going to be focusing on our buyer consultations. We're going to be meeting them up front, rather than, oh yeah, hey, I'll meet you at that house in 1 hour that you saw on Zillow. I mean, those kinds of things aren't going to happen anymore, because we're going to be required to have buyers sign buyer representation agreements. So there's that transparency up front of what compensation is expected. But to have those buyer consultations, they first need to speak to our trusted lender and have that home conversation, because we as a real estate community need to know, where does this buyer stand?
Yeah.
Are they financing VA and cannot pay the commission? So we need to ask for closing cost compensation. Do they have enough to pay for both the real estate commission and don't need closing costs, because we're going to be in a multiple offer situation? I mean, I'm excited about that as an opportunity. I mean, personally for me, I think it gives me an advantage with my background, because there's a lot of people that don't understand structuring of transactions.
Yeah. It's funny when you said you're excited. I think of the movie Forrest Gump, and Lieutenant Dan's up in the bird's nest of the shrimp boat, and they're in the hurricane, and he's just like, bring it on. Like, to a certain degree, like really good real estate agents like yourself and lenders like me should be like, bring it on. Like, is it scary? Sure. Is it a big storm? Sure. Are we going to survive? Of course we are. And if you know the movie Forrest Gump, you know what happens after they survive that perfect storm. They catch all the shrimp, they make all the money, they invest that money into Apple, and they become billionaires, just like that. And we have that opportunity. So let's pivot and let's really start talking about the opportunity. But before we do, I get this question a lot as a lender. What are Fannie and Freddie going to do? Like, if you're a consumer, you're like, what are Fannie and Freddie going to do? They're not going to do a whole lot, y'all. Like, I'm going to tell you, they're like, hey, realtors, this is y'all's mess. You clean it up, and we'll be sitting on the sidelines watching how it goes. I will tell you, if things get really ugly and detrimental to the home buyer and detrimental to home sales, I could see them sliding in and making some adjustments. Now, what does that adjustment look like? I'll give you an example. Currently, if you're buying a primary home and you're putting 5% down, the maximum the seller can contribute towards your closing cost is 3%. Okay, and closing costs normally are about 3%. Those are lender fees, title fees, appraisals, government fees, recording fees, homeowners insurance, property taxes. Like, look at your purchase price, times it by 3%. That's about what closing costs are. So if you're also trying to add a $10,000 or a $5,000 realtor representation fee, a commission, you might not be able to actually get the seller to contribute enough money to cover your representation as well as your closing cost. I could see, if push came to shove, Fannie could potentially say, you know what, we'll go from 3 to 6 in terms of, we'll go from 3% maximum contribution to 6%. I don't think they're looking to do anything right away. I will tell you that the MBA, the Mortgage Bankers Association, Bob Broekschmidt and his team, they have already reached out to the Department of Veteran Affairs. And they're like, hey, y'all, this policy that you have that your veterans cannot pay agent commission, that's a little bit archaic, especially after this NAR settlement. Y'all should take a hard look at it. And I promise you, I believe in my heart of hearts, the Department of Veteran Affairs within the next 60, 90, 120 days, they'll make a policy change that will allow the veterans to pay realtor compensation up front. The goal is that the realtors don't, that the buyer doesn't have to. But you know, there is now that possibility. We are going to be operating in a new world that, by the way, no one has experienced doing. So if you're looking to buy a home post July 1, it's going to be clunky. And it may be clunky for 6 or 9 months while we as an industry work through it. But as I promised, we're going to start talking about solutions. So what are some of the solutions that, if you were to be sitting down coaching realtors right now, what are the solutions that you're telling real estate agents that they need to be doing to be best prepared to capitalize on this new world?
Well, first things first, if you don't have a dedicated lender partner or partners, you need to go find somebody who has experience, is good, who knows how to structure transactions, and is going to work together with you. The second thing you need to know...
I didn't pay her to say that, by the way, but I should have.
The second thing, you need to have a chart that's printed that you keep in your little notebook or whatever you carry around every day. I'm still a lover of paper because...
Anymore, Cynde, the kids take a screenshot and they save it to their photos.
Okay, you could do that too.
Okay. I do that with my hotel rooms.
For the under 30-something.
I do that with my hotel rooms and where I park in the parking garage.
Parking garage, I do that.
Yes. Well, hotel rooms, I do it as well, but it's a whole other story.
But have a chart. Have your lender put together a chart of what are the maximum seller contributions for any given loan type based on how much money your buyer has to put down. So
and what type of transaction it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Is it an investment property? Then we've got a whole different conversation. So that's really important. And also, like, where is the money coming from? Where's the down payment coming from? You know, so there's a lot more questions that need to be asked. And the realtor involved may feel like that's a little invasive because oftentimes they're just hands off, like, it's here's the mortgage part. That's your baby. We don't want to know anything about it. Just tell me they're approved and I'll go sell them a house. We can't do that anymore.
Yeah, think about that. Think about if you had a seller or a seller's agent who was not willing to cooperate. Like, they were not cooperating. Like, nope. If you want to get paid, that's on you. Cool, but your buyer's buying an investment property. and your buyer has enough money for the down payment, enough money for the closing cost, and enough money because investment properties are going to require what are called reserve assets. And you had pre-negotiated that your buyer was totally fine paying you 3%. And all of a sudden, they don't have the 3%. The seller's not willing to cooperate. And by the way, I'll just let you know this, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac only allow maximum of 2% seller contribution. So all of a sudden, your buyer's $3,500 to $4,000 short, and then they want to go out and they want to borrow it. Well, you can't borrow funds in order to buy an investment property. So they're like, fine, I'll get my dad to gift it. Well, guess what? You can't have gift funds on an investment property. So that's just one scenario where you think you have yourself covered and really you don't. And I mean, we could go on and on and on and do a 3-hour show a la Joe Rogan if Cynde and I wanted to geek out. But I wanted to throw that out there because it's a very valid point that you're telling people, look, y'all, we have to have a solid lending partner if you're a realtor.
Right.
Okay.
And I specifically brought up the investment property because I'm familiar with those restrictions and I know you can't provide a gift, but I would pull 100 realtors and I would tell you that maybe 10 might know that, and they may know that from a transaction where they had an issue.
Now, how about this? In a perfect world, like I'm a realtor. I'm going to put myself in your shoes. If I'm a realtor and I have a buyer, my buyer's name is John Coleman. We call him JC, and JC's going to go buy a house that you're representing the seller. I am allowed to pick up the phone and say, hey, Cynde, what's up? This is Dustin over at EXP. I have a buyer. We just toured your property. I think he's going to make an offer. I've pre-negotiated that he's going to pay me $12,000 buyer commission. Can we work that into the contract? And will your seller be willing to consider paying that for me as long as we offer enough money?
Yes.
And that's allowed.
That's allowed.
Okay, so we do have a way to operate the way we've operated for the past 100 years, which I think is a big myth. The difference is you can't blatantly advertise what that dollar amount is or what that percentage is. So that just is going to force you, the listing agent, and me, the buying agent, to have more dialogue where it's just one extra line item that's getting negotiated.
That's right. It's just going to be, again, more transparent on the contract and giving the seller, if you will, more control over what they're paying towards commissions, right? Because they're negotiating that.
What if I was a listing agent and I convinced that seller to go ahead and pay me a 5% commission, a la the old school way.
Right.
I didn't advertise any co-broke. There was no cooperation. But could I not have a heartfelt conversation with the seller? Hey, look, I'm signing this for 5%, but please know that we're going to use some of my 5% to actually cover what the buyer's agent's going to bring to the table. Is that allowed? Do you know?
That's allowed. I just don't know that. Obviously, this is still coming together in terms of exactly what we can do. This is new ground, new territory.
Okay.
But, so yes, I think more often than not, we're still going to see sellers that are willing to pay that buyer representation, that commission. You got to think about the fact too, it also takes some of the onus off of the seller and the listing agent because the buyer is represented. So if you have a listing agent just all of a sudden representing only the seller and the buyer comes to them and then there's no buyer agent commission paid at all, then how does that fall under their errors and omissions insurance? Is it going to open more sellers up to lawsuits? I mean, there's a Pandora's box here that we could get into.
Yeah, so like with my suggestion, my idea that just popped in my head like 2 minutes ago, yeah, the real answer is, well, we don't know because the dust hasn't settled.
Right.
You're like, can I take a listing for 5%, but then change it to 3 because we're going to use 2 to give to the to the buyer who's the representative of the buyer?
Can I take a listing and put on social media that the seller is willing to pay buyer representation? Honestly, we don't have a lot of those answers right now.
Wow.
So I think there is going to be a lot of dialogue between listing agents and selling agents being who represent the buyer. I think there needed to be a lot of dialogue. I don't think anybody successfully negotiates a large financial transaction via text. I mean, I know a lot of people like to do that, but I, and I've said this to you so many times, one of my favorite lines, I'm still a huge fan of a live conversation. So I think that, we're going to have more dialogue, more live conversations, and we're going to work together. I think with a lot more, we're going to be a lot more synchronized in our community between the listing agent, the selling agent, and our lender partners.
Well, what do you think about this? I mean, I'm thinking at the most basic surface level, what makes common sense? Kind of like, I have good street knowledge. Okay, just using pure street knowledge. If I'm a seller, I want to attract as many buyers to my property because that's how supply and demand works. The greater the demand, the more I can sell my product for. My product is my home. So if I am willing to work with the buyer's agent and willing to compensate them, sure, I may shell out 10 grand more in commission, but what if I sold my house for 15 grand more?
Right.
Than had I not? If I wasn't willing to cooperate, was someone willing to then, show my property, were they going to be willing to negotiate with me? And it's a buy and take. As a seller, all I care about, honestly, is how much money do I net? I want to net the most amount of money. At the end of the day, after I pay closing costs, credits, commissions, pay off my mortgage, what's that wire amount going into my bank account? How we come across it, I really don't care.
Right.
Just show me how to get there. But that's another thought that prior to this conversation probably hadn't come in. Like, I can sit and talk to lenders, and I've done this in my coaching program, and I'll continue to do it. I write about it in our newsletter, which, by the way, if you ever want the newsletter, it's free. It's weekly. Just go to the website, tloponline.com, and you can subscribe to the free newsletter. And I just wrote about this in the newsletter, and it's more of, my newsletter's for lenders. So it's me teaching mortgage loan originators what to do, why to do it, what's happening in the market, et cetera. But in that newsletter, I really focused on, hey, lenders, these are 3 things that we should be doing. I've never approached it yet from the realtor side of things. And all of a sudden, from the realtor side of things, the more I talk to you about it today, Cynde, I'm thinking, it's a lot of the same. I'm just going to have to work harder for it. I'm just going to have to do a better job up front of setting proper expectations. I'm going to have to do a better job of actually positioning myself as a subject matter expert in selling the value I bring, where I think a lot of times realtors didn't have to do that.
Right.
Am I oversimplifying it, or could it be that simple?
It could be that simple.
Okay.
It could be that simple. I mean, quick example, I had an open house at one of my listings over the weekend and had a really nice young couple come in, and they were new to the area, from New Zealand, new to the area.
Oh, wow. Like Kiwis. Okay.
Yeah. And really looked at me and said, we have no idea how the process works here. We really need somebody to help and guide us through the process. People are hungry for information. People are hungry. They want to be educated. They want to feel informed in the process. They don't want to feel like they're in the dark. So, just taking the time to sit with people and talk to people and making sure that there's an expectation, though, if you're representing a buyer, that you're going to be compensated for it, right? I mean,
yes.
I don't really know any industry that people literally work for free.
So this is crazy to think. Up until now, it wasn't that common for buyers to sign a buyer representation. So imagine this, home buyers, you go to buy a house going forward. No, you're going to have to interview the realtor. It might not be your mom's cousin's best friend who just got their license, because you're going to interview them and they're going to make you sign a binding document that says for a certain period of time, they are your representation and you're going to owe them X amount of dollars if you buy a house.
That's correct.
Right. And that wasn't really a common practice. It was in play in certain markets and certain brokerages, but it wasn't a common everyday practice the way it's going to be going forward.
Right. It's required. We're not allowed to represent a buyer in a transaction unless we have that signed. There are some states that have always required it, so it's not new to them. So I think we maybe, we take a page from their book and, saying, how did you do this? And it's always been sitting down and doing that.
But that's kind of crazy, because like in my industry, the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, really promotes home buyers to go out and get 3 offers from 3 different lenders. But if I sign a buyer representation, I can't go and use a different lender. What if I want to fire that person? What if I'm like, you suck, I'm done?
Well, I think there's probably going to be certain standards, right? Yeah, if somebody really sucks, you can, you talk to their brokerage and, their broker and fire them. But it is a binding agreement.
So that's a new conundrum.
It is.
Like, a new conundrum is now all of a sudden I sign this buyer's agreement, and my representative and myself, my realtor and me aren't getting along. And I'm like, yeah, I want out. there's going to have to be a new process to get me out of that agreement.
Yeah. Well, and and from my side as a realtor too, I mean, you might turn out to be the buyer that I want out. It doesn't
Well, I
always
think it'd
work.
be easier for you to come fire me. Like,
Sure.
hey, look, by the way, I'm no longer representing you. Best of luck to you.
Right.
But if I'm the buyer, and whether I'm right or wrong, and a lot of times the buyer's in the wrong, right? They're like, well, she wouldn't pick up my phone call. You're like, it was 9:30 on a Sunday night. Like, of course I wasn't going to pick up your phone call. Well, you suck. I'm like, do I really? Or was I trying to spend time with my family and get to bed so I can, attack my work week that's 12 hours away? But that's a new conundrum that I haven't even thought through. Of all the things that, like, I came into the show ready to, like, oh, we're going to talk about this and that and everything else. I don't think we've touched on like a third of the things that we thought about, but I've touched on way more that I'm like, oh my gosh, if I got anything from today's show, it's like, there's a lot of unknowns.
There is.
There's a lot of unknowns, and what we all need is patience. We need to work together. That's buyers and realtors. That's sellers and buyers. That's lenders and realtors. And we need to be very solution oriented. And trust, we'll figure it out. We're smart people as humans. We will figure it out. We have some data and some history from the lending community. They figured it out. I don't think things would be better for home buyers. I think they'll be different. Some of those differences could be positive. Some of those differences could be negatives. Sellers may have gained an upper hand. The real estate community as a whole probably lost, but those that stick around, those that are left, will be much stronger and better because of it. What are some things that we know we have to touch on before we wrap it up?
I'm so glad you asked that. I think one of my biggest concerns as a realtor, as a mortgage loan officer who, I built my career on working with, first-time home buyers. My concern is that the underserved are going to continue to be underserved.
Yeah.
And I hope that this does not become a challenge to homeownership for first-time home buyers and also underserved. And I am concerned that that could be the case. I do hope that Fannie, Freddie, VA, even FHA, I mean, I know that we have a new HUD director coming on. I hope they provide some type of relief if that needs to happen in terms of the compensation, right? Instead of taking this $5,000 supposed tax credit that you talked about on a previous episode in the past week or so, maybe they're allowed to take that credit up front and it becomes something that they can use to help compensate the realtor or something they can use as a tangible the day they buy that house rather than waiting 13 or 18 months when they file their taxes.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point, especially with the underserved in general. Like, here's a wild idea that I had, and I actually shared this with, shout out to Miles, a friend of mine that I have a weekly conversation with, and he runs a mortgage company in the Pacific Northwest. And I was like, hey, this is a crazy idea. And I don't know if, as a lender, if I sit comfortably with this idea, but I think it's a good idea. What if the future is certain lenders offer a concierge service to first-time home buyers, which is like, look, if you use my firm, my mortgage company for your home loan, we will be able to provide you with maybe a showing assistant, right? Another human being who knows a thing or two about real estate that can show you properties, and also some kind of a transaction management team that can help you write your offers, can help you in a loose way negotiate your offer, but can do so as a added value as long as you are using that lender who introduced you to their concierge service. Like, I love that idea. Now, with that idea comes a cost. Like, lenders have lost money 7 consecutive quarters. They ain't got no money to go out and hire transaction coordinators. They don't have any money to go out and hire showing specialists. So they would have to work that into the interest rate. So the borrower would probably end up paying an extra 1/8 in interest, which, by the way, you're talking like $32 a month. Okay, so it's not life altering, that $32 a month, because you also saved having to pay $9,000 in commission. So you start doing that math, divide 32 into 9,000, and you'll realize, oh, wait a minute, it makes more sense for me to pay an extra $32 a month than it would have been for me to figure out how to pay my realtor's commission of $9,000. So this is just probably my more on the outskirts idea that I think lenders that are tuning in, like, look, I'm giving you some of my great ideas for free. If you want to try to deploy it, that is a potential solution. The other solution that I have, and this is something I've been beating this drum for the past 2 years, maybe even 3. And I'm going to be out in Vegas in June for Mastermind Summit, right? So Matt Emery has, just a cohort of a 2-day event. Barry speaking, Dave speaking, Ryan Grant with Neo Home Loans speaking, Jeff Zempfer speaking. Somehow I finagled my way onto that stage, so I get to speak. And when I'm speaking out there, I already know that my 30 minutes is going to be based on becoming that next gen mortgage loan originator. And prior to NAR, I was already telling LOs, look at the millennials, look at the Gen Z. They shop and consume differently than we did or their parents did. We have to get to the consumer first. This was before NAR. This is me talking to a group of lenders. Well, I think what I thought was, hey, you have 2 or 3 years to start figuring out ways to get to the consumer first and better, has now become 2 to 3 months. Lenders, we have 2 to 3 months to figure out ways that we can get to the consumer better, to how we can get to the consumer first, not because we want to compete against our realtors, because we want to add value to our realtors, because we want to be our local community experts. We want to be the source of information, because we just don't know what the future holds. And there's a chance that the consumer may be coming to the lender first and then asking the lender to recommend a good realtor who would work for a reasonable cost, because we don't know how the seller is going to cooperate. Let's hope sellers cooperate the way that we've expected sellers to cooperate for the past century.
Right.
But if they don't, lenders, these are the conversations you need to be having with your realtor partners. And these are just ideas that I have as someone who helps run a mortgage company. Like, man, do I need to open up a division that has transaction coordinators and showing assistants? Do I need to start doing even more video content that I'm doing more community events so that the consumer looks at me? I'll share one last nugget, and I promise I'll shut up, Cynde. I've been coaching this to my students for the past 5 years. I learned when I was hardcore into loans, I quit calling things pre-approvals or pre-qualifications. I called them all home buying consultations. And I learned that because too many people in my circle didn't really know what I did for a living. They're like, oh, you're a mortgage banker. That sounds sexy. That sounds important. I'm like, no, I'm just a loan officer. What does that mean? I'm the dude that helps you get a loan. Oh, you should have told me that. I bought 2 months ago. Right? So I was like, screw this. I no longer do pre-quals. I no longer do pre-approvals. I help people buy houses. People ask me what I do for a living. I'm like, oh, I'm in the real estate industry. I help people buy and sell houses. Oh, can you help me sell my house? Well, I can't because I specialize in financing, but I know someone who can. And I think we're just going to have to do a lot more of that as lenders. What are you seeing that the realtors are going to have to do a lot more of when it comes to their marketing activities?
So I think the listing agent, I believe this, I know this, I shouldn't say think. The listing agent is going to have to present the value to the seller up front when they're having that initial discussion about price and what they're going to net and what the value is of compensating a buyer's agent. So it's going to start with listings. And there are a lot of great listing agents out there. And you see the ones that have the market share. And there's a reason that they have market share, because they are having those conversations. So it's fundamentally going to need to start there. Educating, educating the consumer being the seller. And then I see, the other piece of it with the buyer side is I just feel like it all comes down to, working together, the education, the communication, and making sure you put it all together. And your example that, just to rewind, 45 seconds, talking with your lender partner about, is it an option for my buyer to qualify at a rate that's 0.25% higher, and then they're getting, a $5,000 credit or $6,000
from the lender. We didn't even discuss that yet. Yes,
from the lender credit, and that lender credit, can that lender credit at some point maybe help to cover commissions? I mean, who knows? And just think about it only changed your payment by $30 a month. Well, in effect, you just financed it, which, by the way, people, that's what you've been doing with real estate commissions for a really long time, but that's a whole other conversation.
Correct.
But, you just financed it, and then it became tax deductible for you, that portion of that $32 or $40. And then, oh, by the way, you only financed it for the length of time you own the home, which on average is 7 to 8 years, and you financed it over 30.
Yeah, think about that. So if you actually increase your mortgage interest rate by 0.25%, that's roughly $50. But in exchange, your lender gave you a $5,000 credit to help you offset closing costs and realtor commissions. Then you're like, you saved $5,000. In exchange, you're paying $50 more a month. I mean, I'm not a math major, but 50 goes into 5,000 100 times. 100 times is like 8.5 years on a home that you're probably going to own for 7 and a mortgage you're going to have for 5.
Because you're going to refinance when rates go down.
Because you're going to refinance when rates go down. Right. And by the way, as Cynde just said, y'all, you already were financing in that commission because you paid $350,000 for that house because that's what it appraised for. And the seller still paid your agent and it paid their agent. No, the one thing I see realtors, and I think we mentioned this, but yeah, it bears repeating. I think realtors who represent buyers are going to have to, for the first time, really sit down and learn how to convey their value, sell their value, pitch their value, and then put a dollar amount next to that value and then figure it out because the market has not been determined. The market, is it $5,000? Is it $10,000? Or is it $2,500? Or
is it a percentage and not a flat fee?
Or is a percentage and not a flat fee? And then is someone willing to do it for 1%? Are they going to try to get 3%? Like this is wide open. This is new territory that we haven't really dove into. You and I've had, I'm gonna hold it up for the camera right here. We had a really good article printed out. It's the Herald Tribune, but it was actually Butch Husky, who's the CEO of Premier Sotheby's International Realty. If you all can find this article, or maybe JC or Mark can get it posted up on tloponline.com, or do you have it posted somewhere on your social?
I have it on my social media also, and he also did, along with this article, a great video. The video's about a 5 to 7 minute investment of your time, and wise investment of your time. I can link it to you all. I can tag you so you can put it on TLOP too.
Yeah, well, I want people to be able to find you on social, Cynde, because like regardless, it's the Herald Tribune. I don't even know where Herald Tribune's out of. Maybe it's Sarasota, Florida. It could be New York City for all I know. People are going to hate on me. I'm going to get so much like, oh my God, trolls are going to come after me. But what I love about it, it's one sheet of paper or it's 7 minutes of video, and it's going to do a really good job of dispelling the myths and just kind of letting people know, hey, this is what's up. You and I came on today because we wanted to speak conversationally, right? Just two industry professionals just talking shop and let everyone else tune in. But at the same time, like we want people to understand things are wide open. There's a lot of unknowns. Be patient, be collaborative. There will be opportunity. It's a matter of, do you look for the opportunity or do you run from change? If you run from change, you should probably run into a new career. If you're looking for opportunity, it'll present itself. You're just going to have to be patient and understand that collaboration is going to be key. I mean, you are truly, for the first time, we used to teach it, hey, a best practice, have good relationships with the listing agents in your market. Best practice, have a lender in your back pocket that you know, like, and trust, and maybe even a backup if you need so. And now it's like, no, wait a minute. Every transaction, we are going to have to be open dialogue so that we can make sure that we get the offer negotiated, accepted, and it's going to match the lender's underwriting criteria, and the person's still going to qualify for financing. And we're going to leave them in a position financially where they're not house poor, because that's also imperative as we're out there advocating for home ownership.
Yes.
All right. Anything else that we missed? I mean, this was a long ass episode. We could keep going, but at some point we have to wrap this thing up.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes, we could. There's so many rabbit holes we could go down, but hopefully today we just open some people's eyes to what this looks like, that it's still in its infancy, and we just have to work together and figure it out and figure out what our best practices are going to be.
Yeah, here's what I'm going to advise people to do. Like, at the end of the day, if you're a mortgage loan originator, my first name is Dustin, my last name is Owen. Find me on LinkedIn. You'd be amazed at how quick I am to respond. Keep on tuning into the show. Do us a favor, share this. Like, this is share worthy. This one right here is share worthy. No matter, it may have been long AF, but it's share worthy. Go check out the YouTube channel. Follow Cynde. Reach out to Cynde, especially if you're a realtor or even a lender and you're like, hey, would you mind spending 5 or 10 minutes with me? I'm sure Cynde, just like I would, if it means that we get to invest back into our profession and our community, we're going to be willing to do so. Go to TLOP Online. We'll look to get this article posted. By the time this episode drops, Cynde, your handles are how do people find you? Website, handles, email, phone call. What's your preference?
I'm Cynde Velez, Premier Sotheby's International, but I'm Cynde, Cynde.
If you're on YouTube, you would have seen that because our set has her name written on it. But if you're not, she is Cynde. So. Velez, well, the way that you would spell Velez. I can't think of a different way to spell Velez. No. It's all E's, no A's.
No, exactly.
Too many times we're like, I didn't get that email. I'm like, did you spell Velez right? Exactly. But no, it's just one of those things that keep tuning into the show because we are going to do more episodes. Like this is actually our third episode on the NAR Commission lawsuit. The previous two were, hey guys, this is coming. Hey guys, you should know about this. Like those were the first two. Truth be told, I didn't think it would happen this fast. Truth be told, I thought we was going to go into appeals, get caught up in litigation. I thought we were 2 to 3 years out. When NAR settled, I was like, what? WTF? Like, seriously?
Yeah, that's another episode.
That's a whole nother episode, right? And I'm going to promise you this, between now and the end of the year, I'm pretty confident we're going to be talking more and more about this. As more information, as more experiences are unfolded, then we'll come and talk about them. I'm going to be out at Housing Wire's big event called The Gathering next month. I promise you, when I'm at The Gathering, which is in Arizona, by the way, all this information is on our website, tloponline.com. So if you want to know, hey, where's Dustin going to be speaking next? Or where's TLOP going to be showing up? Like I mentioned, being in Vegas in June at Mastermind Summit. I'm now talking about being at The Gathering, which is Housing Wire's big event in Arizona in April. Like we have the links there because we're in partnership with these people. And if you want to come and hang out with us and learn with us, this is a great opportunity. In fact, I was talking to Clayton at Housing Wire. I think they have like 70 spots left out of like 500. And I promise you, we're going to be talking about and consumed with the NAR settlement. Mm-hmm. But yeah, keep tuning in. Go to the YouTube channel. Go to our website. Follow us on social. We are at the Loan Officer Podcast. My first name again, Dustin. Last name is Owen. Look me up. Look me up. Don't hook me up. Look me up on LinkedIn and let us know how we can further serve you, your community, and your career. You told them how to find you?
Yes.
Say it again.
At Cynde, Cynde Velez, Velez, at Premier Sotheby's International.
Okay, so you want the email.
Well, you can just kind of Google me that way, and you're going to get my website. You're going to find my Facebook page. You'll find me.
All right. Well, she's my friend, Cynde Velez. I'm Dustin Owen. You've just tuned into the Loan Officer Podcast. That is all the time we have for you today, but we do look forward to catching you on our next episode. Peace.